Hello, welcome back to another 5 channel. I'm Jake Books Corner. And today we are talking writing. This is book writing if you've never been here before. Essentially, normally in the middle of a quarter, I will do a book writing update video, which is just catching you up to speed on all the projects I'm writing because I typically don't go too in-depthly in a vlog or something until I like sending you to a place. Also, if I have any big announcements coming up or anything, this is probably where that's going to be, is in this video. I'll also talk about all my word counts. I'm going to be honest with you, April was a really good month for writing. However, every other month was not a very good month for writing. Sorry about that. That being said, we're going to first start talking about, we're going to jump into stats first, and then we're going to talk about the projects individually and kind of where I'm at with each of them. That being said, let me quickly tell you about Gunshot Residue. Was a trilogy I released last year during the months of September. It's actually when your anniversary is coming up, which is fun. It's September through December, and it accumulated to 3 different books: Gunshot Residue, P49, and Mr. St. James. 3 little novellas that are romantic suspense following our main character Alex as he believes his husband is cheating on him, soon realizes that actually his husband is a spy, and now he is brought into espionage. April of this year, I released a bind-up called Gunshot Residue, the complete edition, which has the entire story in one single book. Some people were asking for it. And also there is an epilogue, which will tell you a little bit of information and also sets up the spin-off that is coming out next year called Agent 32, which I think in my previous video I was telling you I'm working on a secret project. That secret project is Agent 32. That's since been announced because that came out around the same time. If you like things like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, that's really what the inspiration for this was. I was wondering how I could make it gay and fun in a certain way. And essentially in that movie, I really just wanted a particular set of sequences from that movie to be presented in these books. And I wanted to do whatever I want. And so Alex and DeMarcus are not based around Jane or John in those movies, or even a lot of the structure is very different. There's still like a few similarities. They go to couples counseling, that type of stuff. The third act has some pretty, like, if you know the source material, you'll be like, oh, okay, I can definitely see where you grab that from. But outside of that, not really. But that's the books I currently have out if you want to purchase them. That being said, let's go ahead and jump into stats real fast. So starting with April of this year, I wrote 28,462 words. We're going to talk a little lengthy about this because this was personally, it was pain. It was really painful. Majority of the Muse this month, I skipped mostly just my off days. I worked on them predominantly on my work days, and this is all I really did in the month of April. And I'll talk about what the Muse is. I'll talk about all these projects that we're going to be briefly mentioning while we go through this. So if we go over into May, I'm still very much trying to finish the book. However, I have now realized that the Muse has some issues, which we'll talk about. And so in the month of May, I wrote 9,974 words, which is a lot more words than I was expecting, between this and Project CFR, pretty sure. Project CFR is another project we'll talk about a little more in depthly in this video as well, but it was mixed between those for that 9,974 words. And then for June, I didn't do really any writing in June. I worked a little bit on Agent 32, which is obviously Gunshot Residue's spin-off that we're doing, and I worked a little bit on CFR and a little bit on other random little projects that I would get like inspiration for. Nothing super major, bringing it to a grand total of 1,609 words. I know on a good day I can write that in a day. Yeah, writing this year has not been going very well, if I'm going to be honest with you. As a mid-year check-in, we've only written 57,793 words, which is only a book. And normally by this point in the year, I've hoped to write at least 2 or 3 books. I am a little disappointed in myself, especially because I do have such high standards. That's okay. This is perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. It's not a big deal. That being said, we're going to jump into project by project. There are chapter times linked down below. I don't really know. I like having them mostly for myself, but if you want to jump around, you can also just skip stats entirely. That being said, let's go ahead and jump in them, I guess, project as I worked on them, because I think that's kind of like what we'll do. Let's briefly talk about the Muse. So I walked into this year thinking the Muse is my next book that I'm going to release to you. This is a romance novel, contemporary romance novel, and I used to say it's a fake dating contemporary romance novel about 2 men who meet in a small town and come together. And then I spent the majority of April and then parts of May working on the Muse pretty in-depthly, and I realized that there were some pretty major problems. And I did talk a little bit about this in a few other videos, so I'll try to link them as well during the time that I was having this big thing. However, I'll go in a little more in-depthly here, as I am going to have to rewrite a good like the majority of this book, I got over 70,000, 75, 76,000 words into it. And I really do like the characters that I had created, and I like the world that we were in. It was very generic, I would say, but it's very contemporary. I guess that's the best way to put it. There's still a few moments in it that I think about fondly that I'm really proud of. The issue being here is that one of the main characters, it's a dual POV novel, they originally had a magical realism element to it, is all I'm really going to say. And I took out any part of the magical realism aspect of the story entirely. I took it out pretty early on, in the first like 20 to 30,000 words, as I realized that this wasn't the story for what the original pitch was, which is like, it's frustrating because taking this out of the story and focusing on the story still kind of had like a rippling effect over multiple projects, which was a weird experience. I have fixed a lot of that, which is really nice. By the way, I didn't fix the character. So one of the characters, like I said, I guess I'll be a little more in depth here. One of the characters originally didn't have really any background because of this magical realism element is all I'm being vague for a reason. And I never went through and I never like fleshed him out, never figured him out, never did any of these things because I didn't think it was like, I was like, I'll just figure it out as I write because that's how I write. And I came down to the realization 75,000 words into it, I really don't know this character. They were doing a lot of actions I just didn't understand. It was a very eye-opening experience, especially because I was moving into Act 3 and I had to change a lot of the first 2 acts. And I also had to change the entirety of Act 3. I've changed it now 5 times because nothing was adding up correctly. Like we were heading in the direction that I needed them to go in for the story. However, they weren't wanting to go. And I think by this point, I guess if I was not so much in my planning days, I would have probably just let the story go to wherever the story needed to go and be whatever the story needed to be. But for some reason, I was very locked in on it needs to be in this direction, this structure, and I've not reread it. And so maybe I'm like really off base, but I don't think I am, because like the little parts that I do remember rereading, I was like, oh, it's gonna have to be rewritten anyways because there's a lot of inconsistencies. There's a lot of dialogue with a bunch of different things. The characters just don't feel like themselves and it feels very disjointed. And so I did put the Muse on pause. I originally had a release date for this year. I have now moved it to next year, but it could get moved again. I really don't know when this story is going to see the light of day because I don't really know what type of work it needs. And it really just depends on how much time I have to be able to like really deep dive into it. This isn't one of those projects. I mean, it was a really excited project. I started it randomly. I very much remember starting the Muse. But I have other projects I can like really sink my teeth into that I don't need to jump back to it immediately. And that's the Muse. And that's all I can really say on it because I can't really think of anything else to speak upon it. I really enjoyed writing it. It was really easy to write. Like I said, I do enjoy the characters. I like the voices. I thought it was funny. There's a lot of moments I really enjoyed. It's really cute. I liked the pacing of the romance as well. Maybe one day I'll go back and I'll reread the 75,000 words relatively quickly and see if there's anything to like really salvage and go from there. Not today, not tomorrow, not the next day. And we're going to jump over into Agent 32. Agent 32, I can't really tell you too much about. However, I can tell you, in case you're curious, a little, just like a teeny tiny bit. This has an interesting structure I will get into more as we get closer to its release and we start doing some bigger announcements for this project. However, it does follow a character from the books, from Gunshot Residue. And I am calling it a companion piece because I think they do, like, it's one of those companions where it's like, you'll be more enhanced if you read the original trilogy before reading the new stuff. However, I'm going to try to make it very clear that you don't have to read the old stuff to read the new stuff. We are following Agent 32. This is a character, G32, as was originally called, is a character that pops up in P49 and also in Mr. and Mr. St. James. If you're familiar with the story, I'm not spoiling anything, don't worry. This particular side character, she doesn't have a big role in the books, but this particular side character, she has something interesting happen to her in the 3rd book, is all I'll say. And it really inspired me to want to branch out and like really to like discover that story. There's also a few other things that happen in that 3rd book that I wanted to explore a little deeper, but I couldn't do it with the relationship that we were talking about. It just didn't have the like the bandwidth or whatever. This character does. This is a very different vibe as well. This isn't just it's not going to be just like a romance novel. That was a decision I had made pretty early on. It is following some romance tropes and there is going to be romance in it. However, it's also going to be interesting. I think it's my first ever like quote unquote straight romance. It's kind of fun. We're following a female main character. It's in first person and I love her deeply. And I have all these good ideas and stuff, and so we'll really just have to weigh it out. Because like in reality, the idea that I had for the structure I had for this originally might not work for what we're doing now. I don't know, but I'm really excited and I have a feeling I'm gonna get really inspired here relatively soon to jump into it, which is also exciting. And I'm just allowing myself to write a few hundred words here, a few hundred words here to like kind of build it out. I'll work more on it after I finish my Listed Fantasy project, which we'll get to a little bit as well. That's really what I can tell you about Agent 32. I can't really tell you what the plot is or anything like that. I count that all as, it's not spoilerly, to be fair. Count that as, you know, we're gonna keep it a secret for now. I can tell you that it is following the character, so if you like G32 in the Gunshow Residue books, she is getting her own spin-off, which I'm excited about. Oh, let's briefly touch on a different set of secret projects, which I guess this is just like secret project little area. I had a series of secret projects I was going to be working on that were going to release over the course of next year. There were 4 or 5 of them, and I've canceled them all. Essentially, I started writing the first one, and these are short little novellas, and I'll also tell you the genre. It's erotica, is where we're handing in. I won't tell you the whole point here. One of them I think is going to get released, so I'll keep it open. It is erotica, and which is a completely different thing that I'm used to dealing with. This isn't a romance. This isn't like 2 people end up together at the end. It's really just lots. And I started writing it, and I was like, this is not going to work. The other project I had a different idea for that I could do, and I don't even have to do it in the same, like, I can just take the fun part in the middle and get rid of all of the stuff that's not working for the other project, and it'll be fine. But for a lot of these other ones in the series, don't. And these are not, like, connected or anything like that. It's just, like, a fun little thing. Okay. I think that's important. That's that. We can move on from that. Just know that I did cancel 5 books in this month and in July. That's kind of insane. Or, I mean, I guess, yeah, it was in July, wasn't it? Moving on. Then lastly, the last few projects we'll talk about, let's quickly talk about Project Sara, which is coming back into my life. Project Sara is my zombie book. I've always said it's Sara going on a revenge mission in a zombie apocalypse. I don't know if the pitch will forever be that. I don't know if I won't go through and scrub some of the stuff out, because zombie could be, I don't know. It's fine. And I have the first 2 books, not the ending of the second book. I realized I need to do some work on that. But I have the first 2 books pretty much done. Then I'm working on the 3rd book as we speak now. This is like a 10 to 15 book series. So like we're really far from even being close to being concluding in this story. And because of that, I've actually made some pretty significant changes to the ending of the 2nd book instead of a more interesting 3rd book. So the first 2 books will get rewritten. I don't know how much the 2nd book is going to get rewritten. I like a lot of that, but the whole of the 1st book will get rewritten. And I haven't started the process on that, but I will start the process. Currently, the 1st book's sitting like around 40k. The 2nd book's sitting around 60k. I'm okay with that, with the difference. This is also going to be released under a pen name. These are horror. This is extreme horror. This is really violent. It deals with really adult and very intense subjects. Very intense scenes that go on for a very long time, and there is no like break from it. And then I do have little periods of breaks, obviously, but I don't know if there will be that many because of how the structure of these books are changing. Originally, the first 2 books were 1 book, and then I realized actually they should be 2 books, and I should untangle them. And so I did untangle them. I do think it works better as a full project. Now let's talk about Project CFR. Project CFR has gone through a lot. The last time I talked to you, I told you I was putting it on pause, I'm pretty sure, because I didn't think that, I don't really remember why I had decided that CFR was not a story I wanted to work on this year. I think it really just came down to timing, and I just didn't think I would have enough time to be able to fully fledge a project and get it out to you in the best way I want to. Project CFR is our baby. This is a story that I started writing in this video series. That video series, it's the right with me. You know, we're writing this book together. Not that I've done that a lot on this channel, I'm so sorry. But I'm working on the project. I'm thinking about the project. We're doing things with the project. And we're still in that first act, so I could hop on a live 10 minutes from now and work on it with you live. Like, that's where we're at in this project. Get this out of the way. The title, I'm going to tell you, I will replace this little guy right here with a new one, and it's called The Monster Hunter and the Shopkeeper, or The Shopkeeper and the Monster Hunter. I'm not really, let me know if you have a particular order you like them in, but that's the point. The Shopkeeper is Franklin. Franklin owns a magical shop where he sells objects that he finds. I won't get into too much detail there. If you want more in-depth details about any of this stuff, I'm talking about them in vlogs. I also have updates. I'll link you to the playlist. And then we also follow the Monster Hunter, which is Francis, the 2 friends, who is a monster hunter. They knew each other from childhood. They end up meeting again as adults, and they start a budding romance. And this is Project CFR, stands for Cozy Fantasy Romance. However, I never know what order it's going to go in. It could be a romance, fantasy, cozy. It could be, like, the order is very important. I won't know until we're a little deeper, because the stakes are very low at the moment, so it feels very cozy. However, there are a lot of elements that we're building towards that have higher stakes in them. So we'll see. And then lastly, basically the final project that I want to touch on in this book writing update is my little sister's fantasy project. She just talked to me about it the other day. She's like, have you started working on it? I have all these ideas. I wrote down a bunch of her ideas as well, as I always do, as this is her book. Over the last like 9 months of last year, I worked on a story called Legends of Dragonilla. I do have a cover, I'll throw it on the screen. This is illustrated by my little sister. The entire book is illustrated by her, and then it's all written by me for her. And it's a story about a girl named Liliana who ends up going into a world called Dragonilla, who have a dragon writing school in it. She ends up getting an egg, and the first book is about raising this egg to a dragon, and so forth. Well, there's obviously a lot of other stuff going on, but that's like the bare minimum that we're going to talk about here. And it's been a minute since I've read the first one. Actually, it's probably been almost a year now since I did a full reread of it in August. This month coming up, because it's the end of July when I'm filming this. In August, I do plan on doing a whole reread, as I will be writing the second book between the months of September and October, then editing it between the months of November. Well, actually, I'm just going to be editing it in November, in the beginnings of December, and then giving it to her for Christmas. These are quick turnarounds. They don't have beta feedback. They don't have anything else. The only person this book is literally going to have eyes on is my little sister. No one else reads these. And then one day, if she decides that she does want them published or whatever, I'll go more deeply into like a bigger edit for all of them. I won't really probably change a lot of the plot, but a lot of it, I'll probably go back and even do like a rewrite of it and whole 9 yards. We talked about it, but I do want to wait until she's 18 before she makes any decisions, and she is turning 13 this year, so she is very far off from having any of those big moments. And we're very far off from even being able to like really divulge in this story. I do have a video coming out this month that is dedicated to her project. I'm hoping that all of this stuff will get me in the mindset to want to work on it, as this is a project I can't outline. The books don't allow me to. I don't even know how to explain that to you. If you're a writer, I hope you understand. If you're not, or if you are a writer, you don't, that's also fine. I just physically cannot. Yeah, I can't outline them. It's like impossible. So that's all the projects. All right, let's go ahead and close out this book writing video. I hope you guys really enjoyed. I hope that you feel much more like that I did a good enough job explaining to you exactly what we're going to be talking about over, the next 3 months and stuff. I don't know, this feels really weird because I'm filming this like a week or two after I filmed the initial video. I filmed a little off base just in general. But yeah, that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.